Hi guys, it's Horsey Stuff, and today we are back with Horse Trainer Reacts to Misty. I'm really excited to watch. I'm expecting them to get the Phantom under saddle in this segment, which I'm really excited to see. The last segment was just like pure horse training, and I think this one will probably be horse training as well, because there's really nothing else for this movie to focus on. So I'm so excited. If you guys could go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos, that would help me out a ton. And check out the description box down below if you missed any of the prior sections of this movie. I'll make sure to link all of them in that description box as they come out. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in and see how this training progresses. Oh wow! Alright, so right from the beginning, they have already made progress. I feel like it's like a little like time lapse, because we left off on the last segment with they had just put a piece of cloth around her belly and tied it and gotten her used to that. Now they have a cloth on her back. They've tied that other little strip of cloth around over top of it to kind of create a saddle of types. Obviously, it's a saddle pad or a blanket of some type, tied on with this makeshift girth they have, and then they also have a bridle on her, like a normal snaffle bridle of some sort, I think. So definitely lots of progress. They're leading her with the bridle, and they're gonna take her out, and we'll see what their kind of plan is here, if they're gonna try to get on her like this, or if they are gonna work towards putting an actual saddle on her before they get on. I guess I don't know what their intention is. I do start my horses bareback, but this doesn't look like a way you would want to start a horse. If I'm gonna start a horse bareback, and again, I mean start like sit on them bareback, I typically do put a saddle on before I ask them to move under me. But I do like to just slide on and off bareback first, because you can get on an awful lot easier. It's a little easier to feel out the horse and whatnot. But anyway, this looks much more like they're getting her used to carrying something on her back, just this blanket at this moment in time, versus something they're going to try to actually get on and sit on, because I imagine it would be quite a bit more slippery than riding straight bareback. So I am curious to see how this all goes and what exactly their plan is for this training. Alright, they are taking the Phantom out by herself, so they've started maybe a soft weaning process of sorts. I like to take the baby out and leave the mom behind when I soft wean, because I feel like it can be a little traumatic to just abandon the baby. Obviously, it depends on your situation. If you have the baby out with other moms and babies, perhaps taking the mom out is a better option. But when you just have the mom and baby by themselves, I'd rather take the baby out, because then I can provide the comfort for the baby and give them direction and help them cope. Let the mom kind of, if she's gonna panic on her own, because she should have enough coping skills to be okay. The only thing I have to say about how they're handling Misty is I do not like the fact that they have those reins over her head and they're holding her at the chin. I'd like to see them pull those reins all the way over her head, so they have more space to lead her. Again, it's not so much that I have an inherent problem with leading a horse this way with the reins on their neck, but you definitely have a lot less control. You have a lot less space, so if something does happen, you really don't have room for the horse to move away before they're dragging you. And given that the Phantom is quite green and not super trained and definitely not used to wearing this bridle, I would like them to give her a little bit more space, just in case something goes bad, so they don't create issues. Oh, they are getting on her. All right. So I don't think she's super prepared for this. I think that she was chomping at the mouth, like she didn't really understand the bit situation and wasn't very comfortable with that. And then the girl held her while the boy got on, and she kind of like, oh, when he landed on her. He got on her super gracefully. That was a really nice mount from the ground. But again, I would have liked to see her relaxed. When I'm starting a horse, I always want to see them relaxed when I get on. But obviously, you know, she hasn't done anything super dramatic, and I'm sure this is not the first time she's had somebody on her just in terms of the movie. I don't think you would ever put the boy on the very first time she's ever carried somebody bareback while you're filming, etc., etc. So I'm sure this is a little more staged than maybe some of their training videos. I think they probably had a good idea what she was going to do and have at least put some effort into keeping her from being so green. I would imagine this is a fairly green pony still, but not an unstarted pony. This is first backing up. So I do think she has tension, but I'm less concerned knowing that this is not her first ride versus, like, for the sake of this movie, first time somebody's on her, she has all that tension. I would be worried if you ask her to walk forward from that, she might completely blow up. I think the girl's probably gonna walk with the pony, which can help mitigate that a little bit, but obviously you can't completely prevent it. If she were to really blow up, it's gonna be really hard to hang on to this pony. So just not setting the boy up for success again. He's kind of hoping things will work out, hoping they can just manhandle this pony into listening, and it's always a poor idea. You should always make sure you're setting yourself up for success as much as possible in every situation. But she looks, fairly good. It's going along well. All right, so little training here. He's basically gotten on and she's kind of running around doing her own thing. I don't think he really has any control over her pace, over where she's going, but she is just going forward. So it goes back to what I always say every time I'm watching anything that's, going poorly or the rider's losing control. As long as you keep the horse moving forward, you'll probably be okay. And she is going forward. He is grabbing her mouth pretty hard, and she broke into a canter while he was doing that. So it tells me that he has no brakes whatsoever. And steering, I'm really not convinced he has steering either, because he kind of pulled her around in the very beginning to kind of set her off, and then she picked up a trot on her own, and then picked up a canter on her own. But the steering seems fairly rough, like he's really gonna have to crank her head around and manhandle her to get her to turn. The brakes seem non-existent. Those are all things I would want to see before I ever got on a horse. You can absolutely teach a horse how to yield to the bridle, teach them to softly turn, teach them to softly come back off of it. Before you ever sit on it, why put yourself in that situation where you're on a horse with no control of it and no way of communicating with it? I mean, we all know that riding is just the illusion of control. At the end of the day, the horse is gonna do what they're gonna do, whether you want it to or not. But I would love to see, and I always want to see before I get on a horse, that they at least understand what I'm asking, so we can at least communicate clearly before I get on. Before I start interacting with the horse in a way where I could be at danger when they don't understand. I mean, what if this horse were to run off a cliff? What if this horse were to run into something? I mean, bad things can happen without the horse doing anything particularly mean. So before I involve myself and really put myself in harm's way, I want to know that I can at least clearly communicate with the horse, even if I can't actually control it. Clear communication is a great start. And that is something I do not think this boy has. I don't think this pony really understands how to come back off of the pressure to slow down. I don't think she really understands how to turn. She's probably had some experience being ridden, but she's very, very green and hasn't really learned how to appropriately come off of aids. Has just learned like the very, very basics enough that she doesn't, buck or rear or kill anyone. I'm guessing where her training is at this moment. And certainly this is not how I would want to back a horse, in this big open space without any real semblance of communication. I mean, just the things that could go wrong, right? I mean, you have no way of controlling any parameter here. And I'm always about, like, how much can I control? That way I don't have to worry about all the stuff I don't control. Here, he can control nothing. I like to be able to make sure that I've controlled everything in the situation. So the horse is the one thing I don't have control of, and it's an environment where nothing can really happen. I mean, knock on wood, because bad things can happen anywhere, but this is, again, not setting him up for success. And I'm very big on always set yourself up for success. The grandpa is pretty thrilled that he's gotten on this pony and all is going well. Which makes sense. I mean, he said this pony was going to be really hard and they might not be able to do it. And, you know, the boy did it. He was able to get this pony going. He got on the pony and he's riding it. I mean, again, it's not super well trained and there's a lot to be desired there, but he is riding the pony, which is a great start. Finally has the pony down to a halt, and they look pretty okay. And now the Phantom is calling out over across the water to the Piper, the stallion of her herd. This actually doesn't shock me at all. I think despite the fact that she's been in captivity for a while now, I mean, we have no idea how long, but some amount of time, obviously. She's not going to forget that she spent 3 years out there in the wild with this stallion, and that, you know, he's an important part of her herd. I'm sure she's not just calling to him, she's probably calling to the whole herd. They're just showing the stallion because, you know, that whole idea of, you know, the stallion leads the herd and the mares are loyal to the stallion and all that, which I think is kind of outdated. It's a whole family unit. The whole herd is a herd, and they really all look after each other and stick to each other. But anyway, besides the point, I think this is absolutely reasonable. She gets to the coast, she can see her old island, and, you know, she's gonna call and be like, hey, where are my friends that left this direction a while ago? And if they call back, she's gonna keep calling and get a little worried and anxious, and, you know, she probably wants to go back more than anything. I'm imagining that never really goes away, that desire to go back and be with their herd. And horses form really long-lasting bonds. You can take a horse away from its herd, and years later it will still remember that herd, and you can bring it back, and it's like a little happy family reunion. So horses bond for, you know, real friendships and bonds. They don't just make new friends and forget about their old ones. So I would imagine anytime you domesticate a horse, they miss their friends, the freedom, etc. forever, even if they appreciate the things about their new life as well. Doesn't replace what they've left behind. And, you know, they didn't have a choice about leaving it behind, which makes it a lot harder. They were forced into it. Oh, she wants to get in the water and swim back to Assateague. Yeah. So now he's gonna struggle a little bit. She wanted to go back across the water and swim back to her herd. Again, not shocking to me. And you could see just how green she was by how he was kind of kicking on her and cranking her head around to keep her from going into that water further. So definitely is a pony that needs a lot of work to be softer. And again, all stuff you could do on the ground before you ever get on, and then you would never have to get into that situation where you're so big and harsh on that poor pony that just doesn't know better. So just setting her up for failure. But it does break my heart a little bit how much she wants to go back across to her friends, and how I know she's never going to get that opportunity.
Why are you so surprised it is gentle in the family? You're the one who said it. Said what? That he was kin with the wild thing.
That is true. The grandfather's been going on about how this boy has a real attraction to the wild things, and, you know, here's that call at Assateague. Of course he's able to gentle the pony. And it's not that there's anything like super special about him, except he wants it, and he wants it bad. So he's just gonna put in the work and try again. If, you know, he fails and runs into trouble like he did when he was first halter breaking the Phantom, he's gonna get back up and say, what can I do to fix this? And let me just keep working at it and figure out how to solve the issue. And with that kind of attitude, of course you're gonna be able to gentle the Phantom. It's just time, right? It's really just time. He's going along really well now. Nice steady canter, looks really comfortable, and I think that was actually the girl riding, so that's good that she's also able to ride the Phantom now. I don't think she's as experienced a rider as the boy is, so that means the training has definitely progressed. The Phantom is a little more solid than she had been that first time we saw the boy ride.
We just can't get the Phantom to take a bit from it.
Come on, Rich, you travel right?
Alright, so the boy just said he can't get the Phantom to take a bit. I'm a little confused because I was pretty sure they had a bit in her mouth. Maybe they did have some sort of noseband and that was a hackamore, but I don't think so. I'm like pretty darn confident that was a bit, unless it was like a string and they just tied a piece of rope around her head and through her mouth, which I guess is possible. But the way she was gaping her mouth, I mean, there was something in her mouth. There was definitely something. So I'm confused about not taking the bit. So I'm curious what the grandfather says and what they really mean by that. Other side note, he is doing his own farrier work. Very cool. I do a lot of my own farrier work on my horses, so I think it's something that takes a lot of education, and I don't promote people just backyard hacking up their horses' feet. But very cool that he does his own, and I think that if you're qualified and you spend the time to learn how to do it, it's something any horse owner could learn how to do and is really going to benefit your horses in the future. So very cool to see, and I imagine much more common in this day and age than it is now.
You mean it's all right?
Of course it's all right. The Phantom needs having a metal bit. I think she'd be the happier for it.
All right, so I guess she doesn't accept a metal bit, so it sounds like maybe they do have a rope in her mouth or something of that nature, or perhaps they have a snaffle and they're talking about putting a curb in her mouth. I'm not really sure. They're not being very clear, so I can't speak too much about it. But they're saying, you know, she neck ropes, they put the rope over her neck, she turns, and she stops when they pull. So, I mean, she's broke, and the grandfather's absolutely right. There's no reason to put some equipment on her that she doesn't like, just to put it on her. If she goes well and she's happy and everyone is happy, why force equipment on a horse? And this is something I deal a lot with my personal mare. I have had a little bit of issues putting a bit in her mouth forever. She can get very anxious about it. I can ride her with the bit, but I would never say she's as relaxed and happy in a bit as she is bitless. So I go back to riding her bitless a lot and kind of waffle between, do I want to really put the time into getting her comfortable with a bit, or do I want to just, you know, leave her bitless and work with her that way? With my mare, it's a little bit of a challenge because she can also be a little bit difficult with the bitless. She can lean on it, kind of be heavy. So the bit offers me some advantages with my own personal horse. That's why I kind of keep coming back to it. But if you have one that goes great bitless and you have zero complaints, or goes great in a certain setup and you have no complaints, why change it? Do what makes the horse happy and makes them go well. And that should always be your goal with horses, not fitting some arbitrary norm. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that segment. They got on Misty, and definitely a lot of work to do, but you know, she's coming along so well in her training. I'm very proud that the kids are able to do all this. And again, I'm just glad to see them putting in the work consistently to get to their goals. That really makes me happy when I see kids work hard, and that's something we've seen throughout this movie. When these kids want something, they don't whine, they don't complain, they don't beg, they buckle down and say, what can I do to make it happen? And that is just such a good virtue for a kid to have, especially at their age. I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. If you missed any of the segments, check out the description box down below, where I will link all of the segments to this movie so that you don't miss any of them. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.